Our adventures in 2023 transplanted us across Italy for the most part, but in April of this year, we decided to take a little detour across the Adriatic to Albania. And I've always been fascinated by this country with its intense history. What was it like today? And how could it not be gorgeous if it's nestled in between Croatia and Greece? Too curious to pass it up, we took our car on an overnight ferry and parked ourselves in Tirana for a while. Long story short, it was wonderful. Slow travel takes you from being a tourist to becoming a short-term local. Enough time to join a gym, a church family, and become a repeat customer at your favorite places like Cafe Hannah, which was a vintage shop and coffee house so perfect for a coffee under the springtime trees. Every few days, I'd also be sure to remember to buy flowers from the lady sitting just outside our building. Now, traveling full-time, we love to stay in and make our food. It's something we crave, but at the same time, Albanian cuisine was so hard to pass up. Our favorite restaurant had loads of vegetarian options and live folk music on the weekends. Here's a little taste. Tirana streets fly the flag of the EU everywhere, even though they're not a member yet. It's something that they're striving for. And as wonderful as Albania is, its history is unfortunately super rocky, but I'll share more on that later. In the meantime, my mom came to visit us, and besides all the fun we had together, we made sure to dive deep into the history, even though it was really hard to hear. We learned how a terrible dictatorship with alienation from the rest of the world put Albania decades behind in its development. And you can see that today with its level of tourism compared to like Greece on the other side of the border. The country still has some thousands of bunkers that were built in case of an attack that never happened. We visited a bunker museum to understand more. But I will say, thankfully, you can feel the spirit of revival in Albania. The history is definitely a grim part of its past, but God is doing something new here. Another special weekend road trip was guided by a family friend who took us to Kruje and Tirana's surrounding mountains and rivers. It was cool because the only encounter we had during the entire multi-hour hike was a local villager with his mule, and he was transplanting some branches back to the village. Apparently he does this every single day, several times. Amazing. We also made sure to jump in the icy river, and then after that we stopped by a village pub where our friend had arranged this incredible feast for the three of us. Later on that day, we visited the bazaar in Kruje, and we learned about the fabrication of the traditional wool hats that you saw some of the folk singers wear before. And apparently these are worn mostly as hats, but they can also serve as lampshades, which I don't know was just done for tourism or if that's how locals also use them. but wool is definitely an important part of the culture here. And just in general, textiles, sewing, beadwork. We went to this really cool store that had very old pieces, decades or even century-old textiles. And there's just such beautiful, beautiful colors and pieces. There's definitely not a lack of color anywhere that you go. After a super nice time in Kruje, and we also had some herbal tea foraged from the mountains, we went up into the mountains to watch the beautiful sunset. A few more days left, a last weekend spent by the beach, and also a few hundred sheep later, it was time to say goodbye to our now beloved Tirana, Albania, and pack up our things in our car and drive northbound with the goal of arriving back into the north of Italy. The goal was always to leave Bari, down south Italy, and then end up back in the north in time for the hot summer. And instead of driving to the north of Italy through Italy, we did it over the Balkans. So driving along, the next stop on our way was to head northbound into Macedonia, and we spent the weekend by the beautiful Bay of Kotor, and then made our way into Bosnia. So incredible. Bosnia is really another pearl, but with a terrible past. And you can feel the young people striving for this new hope and this new vision for their country. First off, there are so many young people here compared to Italy, for example, which has such an aging population. As you can imagine, Bosnia's wars and their genocide was rooted in religion and also ethnic divides. Bosnia is Europe's only majority Muslim country, and they've got deep influences from the Ottoman Empire, now Turkey, and the old town felt so much like Istanbul. So much of the decor and the copper and the household goods were so reminiscent of our time in Turkey. We visited a coppersmith and bought a couple pieces as well, and continued our time along the streets, also with a guided walking tour to learn as much as possible. Now, as our time was filled with a lot of walking and learning, and of course, you can guess it, eating. Some of the most inventive food I've had all year. One night, our favorite meal that we had out was a restaurant that featured stinging nettle in every dish. It was so cool. The old city thankfully hasn't modernized at all. It's ancient, it smells of baklava and strong coffee, and it sounds of pounding copper. Bosnian coffee is similar, but apparently not to be mistaken with Turkish coffee. I couldn't tell the difference, but its ritual, along with making a new kitty friend, is something that I'd sign up for any day. I really recommend adding Sarajevo to your list if you don't have it already. After Bosnia, we rolled through the Croatian coast and then eventually made it back into Italy for our next chapter into Trieste. I'm so thankful for the time we had here.